Your neighbor planted a garden in May. By October, he was back at the grocery store buying winter vegetables. A Japanese farmer planted 20 crops in April, and by October, he was done shopping for the entire year. The difference is not soil. It is not climate. It is a 45-day window and a specific planting sequence that almost nobody in the West has been taught. Miss the window and your harvest feeds you for 2 months. Hit it and your family eats for 12. This is the April calendar. 20 crops. 1 system. A full year of food from a backyard plot. And the first crop on the list is one you have been planting in the wrong season your entire life. Most Western gardeners treat April like a starting pistol. Soil is warming, nurseries are stocked. The instinct is to move fast and plant everything at once. Japanese farmers treat April like a precision instrument. Each week of the month corresponds to a specific soil temperature, a specific day-length threshold, and a specific crop family. Miss the week, and the crop misses its biological window. April soil in most temperate zones crosses 50 degrees Fahrenheit in the first week and climbs towards 65 by the 4th. That range is not a coincidence. It is the exact window where root systems establish before summer heat arrives. A plant that goes into the ground in April develops 6 to 8 weeks of root structure before temperatures spike above 85. A plant that goes in during May gets 2. Those lost weeks determine everything: drought tolerance, nutrient uptake, whether a cucumber vine produces for 3 weeks or 3 months. You have been told to wait until after the last frost. But last frost dates are transplant signals, not planting signals. By the time frost danger passes, your crops have already lost their establishment window. April is not early. April is exactly on time. Japanese farmers figured this out centuries ago because they had no choice. Small land parcels meant every square foot had to produce multiple harvests per season. That constraint forced a level of precision that Western gardening never developed. No crop goes in because the calendar says spring. Every planting decision runs through biology first. The result is a family fed for 12 months from a plot most of us would consider too small to bother with. So how does it actually work? The system starts with 4 foundation crops that do not just produce food. They rebuild the soil for everything that comes after. Crop 1 is daikon radish, and planting it in fall is backwards biology. Daikon started in April has 60 days of cool weather to develop before summer heat triggers bolting. April daikon reaches 2 to 3 pounds per root by June. The same variety planted in July reaches half a pound before it bolts and dies. 6-fold yield difference. Same seed, same dirt. But beyond the food, daikon roots punch deep channels through compacted soil. When you pull a 2-pound daikon in June, it leaves behind a 12-inch tunnel that the next crop's roots slide right into. Crop 2 is edamame, and it is doing double duty in ways most gardeners never think about. Start seeds indoors the first week of April. Transplant in early May with 3-week-old root systems already pushing into warm soil. Now April started edamame yields 30 to 40 pods per plant. June started edamame yields 8 to 12 before cold shuts it down. That gap is not marginal. It is the difference between freezing 20 bags for winter cooking and getting a handful of snacks before frost kills the plant. But the real payoff is underground. Edamame is a legume. Its root nodules pull nitrogen straight from the atmosphere and lock it into the soil. When you harvest in September, leave those roots in the ground. They decompose and release free nitrogen directly into the root zone of whatever you plant next. Crop 3 is satsumimo, Japanese sweet potato. Sweet potatoes need 100 days of warm season minimum, and that clock starts the moment slips hit the ground. Wait until June and you are already behind. They start slips from a seed potato in water the first week of April. Roots emerge in 7 to 10 days. Transplant rooted slips outdoors by May 1st when soil holds above 60 degrees. Each plant produces 4 to 6 pounds of roots by late August. And while those roots develop beneath the surface, the dense canopy of heart-shaped leaves above smothers every weed in a 3-foot radius without you touching a thing. You are growing calories and mulching at the same time. Crop 4 is shiso, and if you grow it at all, you probably treat it like a garnish. Japanese farmers treat it like infrastructure. Start shiso indoors in April. Pinch the growing tip at 6 inches to force branching. Each branch becomes its own production line. Transplant in mid-May along the border of your beds. The volatile aromatic compounds in shiso leaves repel aphids on contact. You are not planting an herb. You are deploying a chemical fence that also happens to be edible. Now here is what connects these 4 crops. Daikon breaks the soil open. Edamame feeds it nitrogen. Sweet potato smothers weeds across the surface. Shiso guards the perimeter from insects. By the time you plant crops 5 through 12, the ground has already been restructured from the inside out. But the April system does not just fill horizontal space. The next 4 crops stack vertically, and that is where the math gets interesting. Mitsuba, Japanese parsley, is the only productive crop that thrives in the shade where nothing else will grow. Start seeds indoors early April. Germination is slow, 10 to 14 days, because Mitsuba needs a cold period to break dormancy. Transplant under the canopy of taller crops in May. 1 square foot produces continuous harvest for 6 months because you cut the outer stems and the center keeps pushing new growth. It does not bolt in heat the way Italian parsley does, because shade from surrounding crops keeps the soil temperature below its threshold. That north-facing edge of every garden bed that has been growing nothing for years? Mitsuba turns it into a production zone. Negi, Japanese bunching onion, grows straight up in trenches, occupying almost 0 horizontal footprint. Start seeds indoors the first week of April. Transplant into trenches 4 inches deep. As the plants grow, mound soil around the stems to blanch the lower third white. Each clump produces usable stems from June through November. 22 weeks of harvest from an April start versus 8 weeks from a May nursery transplant. The roots sit at 12 inches deep, well below the Mitsuba at 6 inches. Kabocha squash, Japanese pumpkin, climbs a trellis and reclaims the vertical plane entirely. Start seeds indoors mid-April. Transplant in mid-May. Train each vine upward. 3 to 5 pumpkins per plant, averaging 3 pounds each. That is 15 pounds of calorie-dense storage food growing above the ground, while Mitsuba and Negi grow below. Kabocha started in June produces 1 or 2 fruit before frost kills the vine. The April window doubles output and adds 2 months of cured storage life. And komatsuna, Japanese mustard spinach, fills every gap the others leave behind. If you have never grown this crop, it will change how you think about greens. See, komatsuna germinates in 4 days at 50 degrees, matures in 30 days, tolerates light frost, and regrows after cutting. Succession sow every 2 weeks through April. Each wave matures in a staggered window, producing continuous greens from late May through early July. When heat ends the spring run, pull the plants and sow again in August for fall harvest through November. 1 10-foot row gives you 2 pounds of greens per cutting across 4 successions. 8 pounds total from a $4 seed packet. Chances are you have never heard of komatsuna. Japanese farmers consider it a staple. These 4 crops are not competing with each other. Mitsuba roots at 6 inches. Negi roots at 12. Kabocha roots at 18 to 24. They occupy different vertical layers of the same soil column at the same time. That is not companion planting as a nice idea. That is vertical space engineering applied to food production. But you still need volume crops to fill the kitchen week after week. Foundation crops rebuild the soil. Vertical crops maximize space. Volume crops fill the refrigerator. And this is where the system starts producing serious weight. Hakare turnip is the fastest root crop in the lineup. Seed to harvest in 38 days. That is not a typo. Direct sow April 1st. 2 seeds per inch, ½ inch deep. Thin to 3 inches at 2 weeks. Pull roots at golf ball size for peak sweetness. 1 20-foot row yields 40 roots plus edible greens from every thinning. The same row sown in May gives you 25 roots before heat forces bolting. Succession sow every 3 weeks for overlapping harvest through June. And you are pulling fresh turnips continuously while your main crops are still establishing. Mizuna, the salad green that grocery stores sell at $4 for 4 ounces, is absurdly easy to grow in the April window. Direct sow in April, broadcast densely across a wide bed, Thin at 2 weeks by eating the thinnings as microgreens. By week 4, cut 2 inches above the soil surface. Regrowth arrives in 7 days. Cut again. More regrowth. 1 4-foot bed produces a pound of greens per week for 8 weeks. 8 pounds of salad greens worth $32 at retail from seeds that cost pocket change. That math alone justifies the entire April system for some families. Japanese cucumber, started indoors mid-April, trained vertically on a trellis, produces 25 to 35 cucumbers per plant over 8 weeks. The May-started plants produce 12 to 15 before the vine declines. The 3 extra weeks of April root establishment give the plant enough underground mass to sustain continuous production through summer heat instead of collapsing after the first flush. Train 1 main vine upward, remove lateral shoots below the first trellis node, and let every branch above that point fruit freely. And Goya, bitter melon, earns its space twice. Start seeds indoors mid-April after nicking the seed coat with sandpaper to speed germination. Transplant in mid-May when soil holds above 68 degrees. Goya climbs aggressively, covering a trellis in dense foliage that shades the ground beneath while producing 15 to 20 bitter melons above over 8 weeks. The bitter compound charenton does not just give Goya its flavor. It repels spider mites and aphids from neighboring crops on contact. You are harvesting food from vertical space while deploying a biological pesticide at zero additional cost. Step back and look at the picture. By midsummer, crops 1 through 12 are producing the bulk of a family's fresh eating from June through September. Roots from daikon and hakure. Protein from edamame. Greens from komatsuna and mizuna. Volume from cucumbers and Goya. Calories from kabocha and sweet potatoes. Flavor and nutrition from shiso, mitsuba, and negi. At retail prices, the combined harvest from a 500 square foot garden runs between $600 and $700 per season. The total seed investment for all 12 crops is under $25. That gap is not about skill. It is about when you put seeds in the ground. But the system is not done building. The final 8 crops are what close the loop and turn a seasonal garden into a permanent food system. Shungiku, edible chrysanthemum, fills the succession gap after spring brassicas bolt in the heat. Direct sow in early April, cut stems above the second leaf node, and harvest regrowth every 10 days. 5 cuttings from 1 10-foot row give you 5 pounds of greens that last through October. Red shiso provides the pigment for preservation projects. If you are making umeboshi, pickled ginger, or fermented plum brine, red shiso harvested in July and August gives you the color and flavor compound that makes those recipes work. 1 plant is enough for a full season of pickling plus fresh use. Myoga, Japanese ginger bud, is a perennial that changes the economics entirely. Plant rhizomes in April under mature trees or along a north-facing fence where nothing else produces. By year 2, each clump yields 30 to 50 buds from August through October. By year 3, the planting has spread into a dense colony that requires 0 replanting, 0 fertilizer, and 0 attention. You are harvesting food from ground that was previously dead space. Nira, garlic chives, follows the same perennial logic. Plant seeds or divisions in April. Cut 2 inches above soil level. Regrowth arrives in 2 weeks. 1 established clump gives you 8 to 10 cuttings per season from May through October. Plant Nira along every bed edge, and the sulfur compounds in the foliage repel aphids and carrot flies without sprays. By year 3, a single April planting has multiplied into enough divisions to border your entire garden. And the final 4 crops make the system self-funding. Adzuki beans fix nitrogen and produce dried storage protein that holds through winter in a sealed jar. Shiso seeds saved at season end give you next year's planting for free. Daikon left to overwinter and bolt in spring produces seed stalks that yield hundreds of seeds per plant. Perilla self-sows into the same bed every fall without any human intervention. By year 3, you are not buying seeds for any of these crops. You are not spraying for pests because 20 different plants in the same space confuse every insect that evolved to hunt monoculture rows. You are not adding fertilizer because the nitrogen cycle from edamame and adzuki builds soil fertility on its own. But growing food only matters if you can keep it. A summer garden that produces $600 of fresh food is worth nothing if half of it rots on the counter in August. This is where the system converts a seasonal harvest into a 12-month food supply. And every preservation method here requires basic kitchen equipment you already own. Daikon and Hakurei turnips ferment in a 2% salt brine for 3 to 5 days at room temperature. Fermented daikon stores for 6 months in a cool space and delivers live cultures through winter. Edamame blanches in 2 minutes, cools in ice water, and freezes in quart bags. 20 bags supply 8 months of cooking. Kabocha is the easiest of all. Cure the whole squash in a warm, dry spot for 10 days after harvest. Cured kabocha stores 4 to 6 months at room temperature with no refrigeration required. Kometsuna and Mizuna blanch for 90 seconds, squeeze dry, and freeze flat in bags. Shiso dries in hanging bundles or freezes in olive oil in ice cube trays for year-round cooking. Negi and garlic chives slice thin, spread on a tray, dry at low heat for 4 hours, and store in sealed jars. Shelf life is 2 years. Nobody runs all 20 crops in year 1. That is a recipe for overwhelm and failure. Start with 8 crops in year 1. Daikon, edamame, kometsuna, mizuna, negi, shiso, hakurei turnip, and cucumber. Learn the April timing. Dial in your succession intervals. Master the cut-and-come-again harvesting rhythm on your greens. Year 2. Add kabocha, goya, mitsuba, shungiku, and adzuki beans. Your soil is already improving from the nitrogen edamame left behind the previous fall. Your pest pressure is already lower because 4 crop families are confusing the insects that would devour any single one of them grown alone. Year 3. Run all 20 crops with full succession planting and begin saving your own seed from daikon, shiso, adzuki, and perilla. At that point, the system is self-sustaining. Order seeds this week. Prepare beds by April 1st. Sow Wave 1, daikon, kometsuna, hakurei, and mizuna, April 1st through the 10th. Start indoors, edamame, satsumaimo slips, and negi, April 1st through the 15th. Start indoors, kabocha, goya, cucumber, and shiso, April 10th through the 25th. Transplant everything outdoors in May, when soil holds above 60 degrees. By June, you are harvesting greens and roots. By July, you are picking cucumbers and edamame. By August, you are pulling kabocha from trellises, while your neighbor is standing in the garden center buying replacement plants for the ones that died in the heat. The window is open right now. It will not wait.